honeys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Summer. I'm a professional dancer who currently works on cruise ships, and as of this year, February 19th, 2026, I have been a professional dancer for 10 whole years, which is absolutely crazy to think about. That is a third of my life dedicated to making my childhood hobby my full-time career. So for today's video, I thought we would just sit down, have a little chit chat, and I could kind of reflect back on the last 10 years and everything that got me here. Basically, just the journey. I've yet to fully sit down and kind of take in myself of what the last 10 years have looked like. So I thought this would be a good little way to personally reflect, but also if anyone out there is looking into becoming a cruise ship performer or just a performer in general, this might give you some insight. Or if you just find my job interesting, this will just let you know exactly what I've done. So growing up, I always knew that I wanted to be a professional dancer. That was like the number one thing. I was tunnel visioned into becoming a professional dancer. I will say I was not the best dancer. I was actually pretty bad, but I had that grit and I had that determination, and not a single soul was going to stop me from achieving my dream. When I was 8 years old, I actually originally had set my mind on becoming a dancer for Celine Dion. I went to her residency in Vegas when I was 8 years old, and I absolutely fell in love with her. I fell in love with her show, and that was 100% what I wanted to do. Unfortunately for me, by the time I had turned a legal age to work, she had changed her residency, gotten rid of her dancers, and was just performing a solo show for her residency. So I kind of had to pivot and find a new avenue that I wanted to pursue. And during high school, the dance studio that I went to, my dance teacher had actually worked on cruise ships for, I want to say, like 8 to 10 years. I can't remember the exact timeline. Lise, if you're watching this, sorry if I got that wrong. But she was the one that kind of put the bug in my ear about cruise ships. So my professional journey actually started in 2014. I went to my very first cruise ship audition in 2014 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It was for Royal Caribbean. I actually was not old enough to be hired yet. I was about a year out of being old enough to be hired, but my teacher encouraged me to start auditioning as soon as possible, just so I could get kind of desensitized to it, and by the time I was able to be hired, I wouldn't have so many nerves going into auditions. So that's exactly what I did. I will show a picture right here of little baby Summer going to her very first audition. To my surprise, I actually made it all the way through that audition. Looking back on it now, being the dancer that I am now, I don't think I should have gotten all the way through. However, that did give me the confidence that I needed to keep going and know that, you know, there is a shot here. I do have an opportunity to do this as a career. So very thankful for that. Thank you, Royal. Once I graduated high school, I decided that I was going to take a year off from school and audition. And I actually said that if in that year I didn't get hired, I would go to university. Thank goodness that never happened. I am not a school person. I had gone to a couple more auditions for Norwegian, Royal, and Disney. And my Disney audition is actually how I got hired for my very first job, but it was not with Disney Cruise Line. It was actually with Shanghai Disney Resort. I went to the Disney dancer audition for Disney Cruise Lines one day in Toronto, and I got cut first round, and that shattered my heart. But me being the little determined little thing I was, I said, well, then I will come back tomorrow to the character audition and I will show you that you will hire me. Was I slightly delulu? Maybe, but I feel like you have to be in this industry sometimes. I went into that audition, and behind the panel, along with the Disney Cruise Line representatives, was a representative from the Shanghai Disney Resort that they were going to be opening in 2016. Obviously in Shanghai, China. But me being the very tunnel visioned girl that I was like, yeah, whatever. I only care about DCL. Cut to a couple months later in October of 2025, I get a phone call from a Chinese number. Thankfully, I decided to answer the phone, and it was the casting director, Dave Bennett from Shanghai Disney Resort, offering me to come and be part of the opening cast for Shanghai Disney. So off I went on my very first contract. In February of 2026, I flew to Shanghai, China. I was part of creating brand new shows for the castle. And in June of 2016, we opened Shanghai Disney Resort. It was a very crazy experience. I feel so blessed that that was my very first job. It definitely shaped me into the person I am today. Flying halfway across the world at 19 years old to a country where I do not speak the language, I cannot understand anything, yet that was where I had to be for my dreams to come true. So corny. I spent 2.5 years in Shanghai. I started February of 2016 and I came home in April of 2018 or May of 2018. One of those. And yeah, that was my very first job. So now it is April of 2018. I am back home and I am auditioning. I'm back on the tunnel vision of cruise ships. I flew to Las Vegas, Fort Lauderdale, New York a couple times, I think, and Toronto. Well, I didn't fly to Toronto, but I drove to Toronto to audition for Royal and Norwegian. Those were the two cruise lines that I was very determined and I felt like I would fit the best at. I was getting through to the end of all these auditions, but I wasn't booking anything until my Toronto audition. In October of 2018, I went to an audition in Toronto for Royal Caribbean, and that was the first time I was hired by a cruise line. In November of 2018, I started rehearsals for Royal Caribbean's Liberty of the Seas. I did 2 shows on that ship. I did In the Air, which was an aerial show, so I got to learn a new skill, which was very difficult but extremely rewarding. And I was also part of the musical on board, Saturday Night Fever, the musical. Being hired for a musical was not on my bingo card of life whatsoever, but it was an extremely fulfilling experience and definitely got me into the world of theater more. I never really was a theater person. I never really knew musicals like that or anything, but obviously working with a bunch of musical theater people, I absolutely fell in love with it, and I one day would love to be part of a musical again, but we just have to wait and see if that is part of my journey. But my contract with Royal was from November of 2018 to November of 2019. So a full year was dedicated to that contract. And then I came home in November of 2019 and was offered a second contract with Royal Caribbean on Quantum of the Seas. Now, of course, we all know what happened in 2020. I was due to start my next contract in May of 2020, May 4th of 2020 to be exact. In March or April of 2020, I can't remember which one, I had gotten an email saying that my contract had been canceled. Absolutely heartbroken. I think it's safe to say that that time for anyone in the performing arts was very uncertain, very sad. We didn't know if our jobs were ever going to come back. I think we were all just hoping and praying that we were able to get on stage again one day. Luckily for me, my prayers were answered, and in April of 2021, I left to go to the exact ship that I was supposed to go to before COVID, Quantum of the Seas. I was going to replace a few people who were leaving from the first cast back in service. I feel like I could do an entire video on that whole contract, or 2 contracts. We'll get there in a minute, but because it was the first ship back in service and no other cruise ship in the world was operating yet, it was in Singapore, and it was a crazy time, crazy processes of COVID protocols and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to know more about that, let me know in the comments, and I could definitely do a video about that, because looking back, it was a wild time, and to be honest, don't know how I kind of survived that, but we made the most of it. So basically, April of 2021, I embarked on this new journey to go to the first ship back in service. I ended up staying on Quantum for 2 back-to-back contracts, and I believe I left Quantum in April of 2022. Yes. April of 2022, I left the Quantum of the Sea, so I did 2 back-to-back contracts. We only did 1 of the 2 shows that were on that ship just because of COVID protocols again and all that kind of stuff. It was just logistically more operable to only do 1 of the shows. So I did Sequins and Feathers, which was my very first showgirl contract, and I absolutely fell in love with being a showgirl. Me being the little girl who wanted to move to Las Vegas, I definitely lived my showgirl dreams. When I left Quantum of the Seas, I actually already knew where I was going next. I did want another contract with Royal, but the timeline of the next ships that I wanted were very, very far away, and I wasn't sure I wanted that long of a break in between my jobs. I had sent out my show reel and all that kind of stuff to different cruise lines, and I actually ended up getting contacted by Norwegian Cruise Line about 4 hours after I sent them my stuff, which to me just meant fate. They had offered me to go on the Regent Explorer. So if you don't know, Norwegian Cruise Lines owns 3 companies. So they own Norwegian Cruise Line, Oceania Cruises, and Regent Seven Seas. And the entertainment sector of the company, basically we can move between all 3 of the brands that the company owns. I was offered the Regent Explorer, and after looking at the itinerary, I knew I had to take the contract. We were starting in the Med, then we went down through the Middle East, through the Suez. I got to go to Jordan, I got to go to Petra, which was crazy. It went through Southeast Asia and then did Australia and New Zealand. And then I think we went back to Japan. I can't remember where I got off the ship. Something like that. I was a little scared to move companies just because I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know how different the shows would be and all that kind of stuff. It was quite different. So on the Regent Explorer, we had 4 shows where I was used to doing 1. We had Devos and Divas, World Rhythms, Paradis, and My Revolution. But I remember my first day of rehearsal being asked to do things that I literally have not done since high school. One of the first things I was asked to do was a double pirouette on the left. I hadn't done anything on the left since I was 16 years old. Definitely a learning curve again. I remember being put as the center point of a contemporary trio and thinking to myself, what alternate universe have I entered? This is not me. This is not where I'm supposed to be. But I am so incredibly thankful for that contract. It pushed me out of my comfort zone and it made me such a better dancer. I genuinely don't think I would be where I am today without that contract and being pushed like that, or without Creative Studios at all. This company has really, really pushed me to do things that I didn't think I was capable of. So I'm so appreciative of that contract and every contract I've done since then. I finished that contract in April of 2023, and I was unsure of what I wanted to do next. I was unsure if I wanted to go back to Royal and do more showgirl shows, or if I wanted to stay with Norwegian and keep pushing myself out of my comfort zone. Ultimately, I ended up coming back here to Norwegian Cruise Lines and doing the Explorer again. So I started rehearsals for my second Explorer contract in August of 2023. This time around on Explorer was much, much easier because I had already known the shows. My tracks pretty much stayed the same in all the shows, except I learned 2 new dances, and then just some of my formations had changed a little bit, but the bulk of it was the exact same, and I had already known it, and it was still in my body, thankfully. So that rehearsal process was much smoother. And this contract was actually the first time I had ever had a captaincy. I did not get the captaincy in the traditional way of applying for it and then getting it. Basically, what had happened was our singer was our company manager. While we were installing the shows on the ship, she ended up falling and breaking her foot and being medically disembarked from our contract. Because we were now without a company manager, I had approached our director and kind of said, hey, while Anna's gone, I would be interested in being company manager. He granted me that responsibility and I became the company manager for my cast. We didn't know how long my singer would be gone for. Obviously, a broken foot is a broken foot. It doesn't heal very fast. So I knew that I would be company manager at least for a few months while her foot heals. Normally, once a captain comes back to the ship, they receive their captaincy back, so it would be taken away from me and given back to her. But when she did re-embark the ship, quite a few months had gone by and quite a lot of stuff had happened in the cast, which meant that we all kind of had a conversation, me, her, our cruise director, all of that. We had a conversation and had come to the agreement that I would keep the captaincy just because it had been so long that she had been gone for. She actually ended up becoming vocal captain, which is also another big story, but she had ended up becoming vocal captain, so she still had a captaincy at the end of the day. We just shifted them around a little bit. But I absolutely loved being company manager. It is definitely a big responsibility taking that on, but I very much enjoyed being that for my cast. I finished my second Explorer contract in February of 2024, and in February of 2024, I also started my next contract on the Regent Grandeur. I only had a 2-week vacation in between these contracts, which was crazy, but I really did want to do the Grandeur. It was the brand new ship that had just come out. I was the second cast on board that ship. The shows were insane. By far the best shows I've ever done in my life. We had a show called Icons, Marauders Ball, Passion, and Into the Night. And actually, Into the Night and Passion were choreographed and half choreographed by Britt Stewart and Ezra Sosa from Dancing with the Stars, which is mind-blowing. Very heavy ballroom inspired, and Passion was actually a full Argentinian tango show, which was very difficult to learn. If you've never done Argentinian tango before, it's crazy. But again, those shows extremely pushed me outside of my comfort zone and again made me grow so much as a dancer. And on this contract, I was also a captain. I was the dance captain this time. So I was in charge of making sure the shows stayed up to the standard that they were set in rehearsals. I installed a brand new singer because he unfortunately came late to our contract. Anytime a reblock needed to be done, I had to reconfigure the shows, which these shows, because they were brand new, some of the reblocks that I was doing had never been done before, so it was definitely a learning curve of trying to figure out how reblocks would work. Some of the shows, they just didn't. And I definitely learned a lot on that side of it as well. I left that contract in October of 2024. And when I left that contract, again, I knew where I was going next. I was going to the Regent Splendor. I started my Splendor contract in November of 2024. So I had, I think, 6 weeks in between my contracts this time, which is the most amount of time I've had in between my contracts since my second Explorer. So I'm really just go at this point. We had 3 shows on the Splendor. We had Divos and Divas, Diamond Run, and Crossroads. I did unfortunately get medically disembarked from this contract. I ended up developing Bell's palsy, which, if you don't know what that is, it's basically when you get a virus and for some reason that virus decides to tell a nerve right here in your face to shut down and stop working, and it paralyzes one half of your face. So fun. I will put a little video or photo right here of my Bell's palsy. I have no shame in it. I actually think it's hilarious. Now that I'm better, so funny. But because my face was paralyzed, I could not stay on board, so I got sent home, and I did not know how long I would be home for. I was absolutely devastated when they sent me home because I was actually really enjoying my time on Splendor. And again, me being the very determined little thing that I am, I was like, I will be back. I literally told the nurse when she told me I was going home, I said, okay, well, I'll see you when I come back. Again, so delusional. However, I think my delusion worked because I went home, I was only home for a month, and then I re-embarked for the last 2 months of the contract. I left Splendor in July of 2025 with the plans actually of possibly retiring or having an extremely long break. At this point, I was very burnt out. I didn't really have a lot of passion left. I was just feeling very drained. But life gave me a little Uno reverse card, and after about 4 weeks of me being home, I got an email from my casting that said, "Hey, we need a girl. Would you like to go on the brand new Oceania Allura?" And I jumped on that so fast that I think that gave me my answer to should I hang it up or not. I'm definitely not done yet. And so in August of 2025, I went to rehearsals for the brand new Oceania Allura. Again, I was the second cast on board this ship. I was also part of the christening cast for this ship, so that was a really cool experience, something I'd never done before and kind of checked off of my little bucket list. And that's where we currently are. On this ship, we also have 4 shows. We have Broadway, a documentary in concert, Flashback, Rock and Roll Remix, and Our World. We have now been on this ship for 5 months. We have 3 months left. We've been in the Caribbean the whole time so far. We did the very beginning of our contract kind of in Eastern Canada, and then we came here to the Caribbean. We're here for another month and a half or 2 months or something like that, and then we cross to the Med very briefly before we go home. And I don't know where life's gonna take me next. I have now worked for Creative Studios by NCLH for almost 5 years. I cannot say enough thank yous to them. I am a cruise ship dancer through and through. Guests will ask us all the time, "Oh, so is this just your stepping stone to Broadway?" or stuff like that. And that's not every performer's goal. Broadway is not something that is on my radar, has ever been on my radar. Well, if you made it this far, thank you for sticking around. I know that was very long and tedious, but it is 10 whole years of my life, and sometimes I may feel like I haven't done enough or I haven't given myself enough of a chance, but if I really take a step back and look, I have done a whole lot, and I have grown so much, and I've learned so much, and I am very proud of my last 10 years of this career. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I very much appreciate it. If you want to see more, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss anything. And if you want me to go in depth on anything I mentioned in this video, let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. Bye.